If President Trump is increasingly unrestrained by his top aides, which seems to be the media's conventional wisdom, it's really starting to show in his attacks on the press. Also interesting is the way the press is punching back. Now, Donald Trump versus the mainstream media, what he calls fake news, nothing new there, except I'm really seeing an escalation in the sharpness of the criticism and the kind of tactics. So, for example, CNN, president tweeting just yesterday, going after Jeff Zucker, the CNN president he used to have a relationship with when he was at The Apprentice, when Zucker was running NBC. He says, you can't get a job at ratings challenge CNN unless you state that you're totally anti-Trump. Well, that's not entirely true, and CNN is not doing that badly in the ratings, although it is in third place. And CNN fired back on Twitter. False, says the network. The personal political beliefs of CNN's employees are of no interest to us. It chided the president for misspelling Zucker's name and basically cited a poll saying people believe CNN and Fox and MSNBC, by the way, more than they believe President Trump. But this didn't just happen out of the blue. It's because Jim Acosta on Monday at the Easter egg roll, when the president is sitting with his son and a bunch of kids, started shouting questions about DACA. And if you followed Acosta's career, you've seen him have very strong views, acting almost as an advocate for the Dreamers program. And the president did respond to one of his questions, but I thought it was over the line to do it in that setting. And then Acosta said, well, aren't you the person who's killed DACA? And the president did not respond to that. So he didn't mention Acosta by name. I do think that while I understand the president being upset with the way Acosta is often advocating or seems to be advocating for some sort of retention of the DACA program, Brad Parscale, the 2020 campaign manager for the president, went a little too far in my view by tweeting that perhaps Acosta should have his credentials pulled for this breach of protocol. Well, it's not up to the White House to pull the credentials of television or other correspondents. There's the White House Correspondents Association for that. But the president's attacks on Amazon and what he calls the Amazon Washington Post have really is something that we haven't seen before. I mean, with 4 or 5 tweets over a series of 4 or 5 days, he's knocked the company's stock value down by $60 billion. And I don't have to rely on unnamed sources to tell you this is all about the fact that Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post separately, bought it 5 years ago for about $250 million of his own dollars. And in an interview with me and at other times, Donald Trump has said that the Washington Post treats him terribly. He blames Bezos, and then he goes into this whole attack about Amazon not paying enough taxes. It actually paid about $1 billion, or almost $1 billion, in state taxes last year, and also about the Postal Service losing money. But if that's true, if Amazon is costing the Postal Service money, isn't that the fault of the Postal Service for not charging enough for package delivery, not just to Amazon, but to all the online retailers? Nevertheless, that has continued, and we had a strong denial yesterday in a New York Times interview. Marty Baron, the executive editor of the Washington Post, saying that this was false, that Amazon had nothing to do with the Washington Post, and Amazon didn't pay anybody at the Washington Post, that he talks to Bezos once every other week on a conference call, and he said, I can't say more emphatically, he's never suggested a story to anyone here. He's never critiqued a story. He's never suppressed a story. That's where I think the president's attack falls short. I mean, he's entitled to say whatever he wants about Amazon, but there is no evidence that Bezos has influenced the news coverage at the Post. He is entitled to influence editorial policy. I haven't seen any editorials, taking the side of Amazon on the whole package delivery or local taxation issue. And so there's something that's a little disturbing about the President of the United States singling out one company because he doesn't like the CEO and he doesn't like the journalism practiced by the CEO's other company. Nevertheless, I see no side of this slowing down. The president is very popular with his base who doesn't trust the news business when he makes these attacks on outlets like CNN and the Washington Post. But I still wonder whether it might not be better for him to tone it down just a little bit. Maybe he could win over some other people who are not part of that base and who don't share his disdain for the news business.